Welcome to Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a weekly podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Join me, Randy Cantrell, and my co-host Dennis Simpson as we discuss the history, facts, people, places, events, lots more surrounding Hot Springs Village, Arkansas. Visit the website at hotspringsvillageinsideout.com. Welcome back. Another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out. The website is hsvinsideout.com. Co-hosts Dennis, Ray, Simpson.
That's me.
I'm Randy Cantrell. I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth. Unfortunately, I'm in Dallas-Fort Worth. But
you're the outside.
I'm the outsider. These three guys are all the insider. I'm going to let you make the introductions, Dennis.
Well, it's a pleasure to have everybody again today. Mr. Randy in Dallas, Mr. Gary Mouton, and I hope I'm not slaughtering your name.
You got it. Friend. That's close enough. Very close.
A recent addition to my book, but obviously a long-term resident here, and our friend, Mr. Rick Marshall. And Rick, we've tried to have you before, and we had technical difficulties, so we're going to have you again.
Right.
And Rick is actually a realtor that specializes in property on Lake DeSoto, what we call, Gary, the historic end, right?
The historic district.
And Gary is building what I believe, and if I'm not mistaken, Rick has helped me back this up, the first new house on Lake DeSoto in the last 21 years, right in there?
Something like that.
And yep. Rick, what were you able to find about that?
Yeah, 1997 was Gary's next door neighbor, but 2002 is the only one newer than that I could find here on the lake. So it is very unusual to see new construction on this end on the water.
Yeah, it really is. And it looks like it's going to be a beautiful location. Randy, are we going to be able to go to that shot later, maybe?
If Gary wants to, we can.
I can share at will.
You can share at will. So obviously most of you probably listen to the podcast, and that's great. And that's how we want to have you. But at the same time, we do post this on YouTube, and you can see the video of us chatting, which, for older guys, that's fascinating. I'm sure you can't wait to get enough of that. And in case you're insomniatic, we have the solution. But for what we wanted to talk about today is basically kind of the changing interaction of what's happening on the lake. Gary, how long have you lived in the village, and where do you presently live?
So I've lived in the village now, and it's kind of a trick question. I've lived here by almost by force for about a year and a half. We bought a townhouse just on the same side of the lake, just on the west end in 2015, and come up here whenever we could. My wife would spend summers up here, and when the pandemic hit, well, we took refuge here from a place called Olathe, Kansas, which we'd always intended to leave, always intended to move here at some point. We bought the property where we're building back in 2012.
Really?
Yeah, and it was, like you said, Rick, it was quite surprising to us to be able to find a lot that was actually not built on and available on this lake. And we did about 8 months of due diligence. Why is it here? Why is it never built on? Can it be built on? Went through that whole thing and its whole lineage. And it's got quite a long story, and I think it bores most people. But anyway, we after quite a bit of time, we ended up with it right at the end of 2012, and have just been waiting till closer to my retirement, which happens in about 4 months.
But who's counting, right? Who's counting?
Yeah, who's counting? The little countdown calendar on my phone. That's who's counting. Yeah. Yes.
What do you do, Gary? What's your job?
So I work for an engineering firm out of Kansas City, and we're very diversified. We're into everything, but the part I do is I put together proposals to build power plants around the United States, and well, all of America, North America and South America.
And we know how everybody loves to build power plants right next to their facilities. So
they love it.
It's a booming business. People are begging you to come into their town, right?
They are. And my most, I'm from South Louisiana, and my most recent, I told you so, is that about 3 years ago, I was engaged in a proposal to build a power plant in the city of New Orleans. And I went to the city council meetings and watched the people, everyone in the world complain, and we need solar panels and blah, blah, blah. And the day after the hurricane passed, guess what? They had electricity. Now we're saviors all of a sudden. And so that's kind of the way it goes everywhere you go. Nobody wants it in their backyard. They want electricity through osmosis. And it doesn't happen. And you can't get these things off the ground with solar panels. It just doesn't work like that. So that's what I do.
Everybody who wants to go to solar panels, which I have no bias against. I've had solar panels since the 80s. I've really had several. But everybody who wants to go there forgets one little thing. Unless you want to live like the Amish for the next 50 to 20 years, there's a step between here and there that's going to be called nuclear, but nobody wants to have that conversation either, right? Well, anyway, I digress. Rick, catch us up. Tell us where you are, what you do. I see a pretty lake behind you, but it was dredged a few months ago, wasn't it?
It was all last winter, 7 months. We were drawn down about 8 feet. And I don't know how many people know this, but that's on a cycle here in the village. So every 6th year, each lake here in the village will be dredged, and the coves are dug out a little deeper and a little more sludge off the bottom. And Lake DeSoto will actually have some hydraulic dredging going on this fall to kind of finish up with that. But yeah, we were 7 months with I am on a cove on a finger here, and we had no water in the back here for that full 7 months, from November all the way almost to Memorial Day. So it was rough.
And Randy, I have to tell you, more than once, Rick sent me a picture of deer in his backyard, literally over his shoulder. There was a little island in the middle, and he sent the deer were out there getting a drink. And I'm like, well, you don't have a lot of lake left, do you now?
Nope, not much.
Well, let's recap here just for a moment. Hot Springs Village, 26,000 acres of awesome, as Stephanie would say. And this is one of the older lakes. This is probably the next to the oldest. Segovia would be the oldest, I would think, wouldn't you, Rick? And then this would be Lake DeSoto, which is about 210 acres in that ballpark, give or take. How many homes on this lake, Rick?
About 155 or so that are on the water, including the townhomes. Now, Rick, the townhomes that back to the water.
And you know that information because?
Well, I send out a little monthly newsletter to everybody here on the lake, and that's just kind of my sweet spot. I stay close to home and kind of know what's going on around here and like to share it with others and just be a resource to folks.
Yeah, Rick specializes in properties on the lake, and until he started sending out this newsletter, I had no idea that there was that many homes or whatever they were. Now, Gary, you bought your lot back in 2012. And I don't want to go in the weeds about it, but tell me more about, I think I know the area pretty well, and I'm going to spring one on everybody here in just a minute. Rick and I will here in just a minute, but 2012, did this property just come up for sale, or you saw it or what?
It had been for sale. So we had friends here, and I think this is a typical Arkansas thing. We had friends here that bought a place on the lake, on the west end, down here where our townhouse is. And we back up, we're like Rick is, I'm on a cove, off of a cove, so I was dry as far as I could see. But they had a place here, and they said, "Hey, man," friends from Texas, and they said, "We got this place on this lake. Y'all need to come check this out." I said, "Well, where is it?" It's near Hot Springs, Arkansas. I'm like,
"Where?"
Well, I don't think I ever lost anything there. And then every year they'd ask us, and it took 3 or 4 years. I think the first time we came was like 2009. And we came down here, and first time we got here, we just absolutely fell in love with it, me more than my wife. And a couple of years go by, and we say, this might be the place, because we were getting to that age where we had to start thinking about, we weren't going to stay in Kansas. We weren't from there. Winters were horrible, and we were never staying there. So where are we going to go? We need some place that's fairly affordable, and said this might be the place. So we started kind of looking around for a place, and so my wife called a real estate agent and said, "We're looking for a lot." And they said, "Well, okay." She said, "Just so happens a gal in this office, in the real estate office, has a lot for sale that's currently not listed, but she just removed it." And like, really? And so that's kind of how it started. Turns out this gal was getting divorced, and they had to get rid of it.
Yeah.
But it had been listed for a whole lot more than it was worth at that time. Right now, it's probably worth 4 or 5 times what we paid for it. But it ain't for sale. It ain't for sale, my friend.
Not until there's a house on it, and then it's not for sale.
Then it's still not for sale. Yeah, that's kind of how we came upon it. So it wasn't listed or anything, but this gal had it, and we were after, like I said, about 6 or 8 months, we were able to come to terms with her. And
Randy, I've got to come back to you
hand.
just for 1 second, because he asked something that I've never asked you. Who fell in love with it more first, you or your lovely wife?
Yeah, probably me. I'm with Gary. I mean, she was very quickly behind me, but
yeah.
And before we started recording, I mean, he and I've already compared notes, our southern Louisiana roots, and yeah, we've got a lot in common other than just falling in love with Hot Springs Village.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
cool. Well, I have a lot of other backgrounds I want to ask real quick. I want to say something real quick and just get this out of the way, Gary. I think you'll agree with me. Rick, I think you will too. I'm the guy that when people say, well, that's an unbuildable lot, you can get one of them unbuildable lots for $50. Well, Gary, somebody could look at your lot and go, that's unbuildable, because when you walk from the top, from Toledo down to the ledge we're going to see in just a minute, it's kind of steep.
It is, and that was our main concern. This lot's been here for 40 years, and nobody's ever built on it. Why is that? So I brought a builder down there, and I asked the wrong question. I asked, can this lot be built on? And he said, absolutely. I build houses up on the mountaintops that are steeper than this. The question I didn't ask was, how much extra is that?
Now I got
Because
to interject just for a minute. The last home that I looked at, I had a personal tour from Gerald Ellison. I believe that's your builder.
Yes, sir.
And he had a property on Lake Granada and Granada Golf Course at the same time. Randy, it was 5,000 feet on the top, 5,000 feet on the bottom. One of the most magnificent houses I'd ever seen in my life, little over $1 million plus, gorgeous house. He had a relatively flat lot there. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that house is going to be coming on the market.
Is it really?
Yeah, the unfortunate.
Oh my God. You're going to say what you're going to say, what I want, and Rick, I want to address this to you. Pat Bollier, one of my friends in the real estate market, people will say, this is our last house. We're never leaving here. And her joke is, no, one of you is leaving. We just don't know which one.
Yeah.
One of you will be heading out of here. We just don't know which one.
Yeah,
it's one of those scenarios, I guess.
It is. So unfortunately. Sorry. It's very unfortunate.
Really sweet people.
Yes. Very nice people.
Rick, give me a little background about how you got to Hot Springs Village.
Well, I'm originally from the Pacific Northwest. Don't hold that against me. We ended up in the mission field in Puerto Rico for about 7 years. And when we came back to the States, we were looking for some domestic missions work to do. And we found the Arkansas Baptist Children's Home and got plugged in there for a few years. And about that time, we became empty nesters. And it was the next phase of our life to start focusing on. And I decided that, we were going to explore a little, and my wife and I wanted to find the place we were going to spend the rest of our lives. And so we looked at Branson, we looked at Hot Springs Village, Tyler, Texas. We looked at different places, but the priority was a lake, beautiful grounds, affordability. And also for me, I wasn't done working yet, so I needed some economic opportunity. And the village really has everything from, even waterfront, 175,000 to $1 million, here in the village. Of course, outside the village, you've got Lake Hamilton, and it goes on and on. But this was still a economically feasible area to work and to do business, and within an hour's drive of Little Rock. So it was just kind of the perfect mix of everything all coming together. And as soon as we came in, we loved Lake Cortez and Lake DeSoto were our two favorites, just because of how Gary can attest to this, all the foothills just kind of come down to the lakes. You kind of sit a little bit of a bowl, and it's just surrounded by beauty. Get to the east side, Lake Balboa, a little flatter, right? Still beautiful area, very desirable, but it's a different feel. So in the historical side, we have different amenities that we really enjoy on this side. And So as soon as we found this particular floor plan, and we jumped all over it.
Well, the average, I'm guessing, and Randy, I'm speaking somewhat for you. You know, Randy brought this up one time when we had spoken before. A lot of people have never lived on the lake. A lot of people may never live on the lake. And this idea that the lake is, you got to have $1 million and you have to whatever. What could I get on the lake for, Rick? Really, where could I go?
1,000 square foot for a 2-bedroom, 1.5 bath townhome. Well, a year ago, you'd have been in the 130s. Now you're in the 170s.
Wow.
Yeah, we've seen that kind of appreciation
on
here.
the water.
On the water. You're backing to the water. That's right.
Randy, what would that be in Dallas? I'm just curious. What would that be in Dallas?
Yeah, well, triple it, quadruple it.
Yeah. And it still wouldn't be quiet, would it now, Rick?
No, in fact, I was out on the lake yesterday and looked around, and here it is a weekend, and there were only 3 other boats out there with me on an over 200-acre lake. So very
a lady
peaceful.
was asking me, one of our guests was asking me, she said, we're thinking about taking the kayaks out, but the guy at the marina said we need to go in a clockwise rotation. And I said, yeah. And she said, well, I mean, should I do that? And I said, well, let's look and see how many boats are on the lake now.
Yeah.
I think you're safe. I think you're good. Right?
That's right.
So Gary, let me come back to Gary just for a second. Can you show the picture of your home there? Can you share that real quick? Your future home. Can I ask?
This is his desktop wallpaper.
Yes.
For our audience.
Constant reminder.
Yep. So you're going to have to go to the video. So if you're listening in audio, take a look at where you're at in the video, and the audio, and then go to the video, because you're going to want to see this.
There we go.
Yes.
And if I can, let me tell people what we're looking at here. Obviously, we're at the top of Toledo, looking down. The little red spot of dirt down here is going to be where the home site is, and you've got that pointed. And Correct. It looks like it's going to be looking out over the dam, the dam over Lake DeSoto.
Yeah, and I'll take over just for a minute here. So we've got some crawl space here. So the house comes about to this far. This is about the front door here.
Are you moving your mouse?
Oh, yeah. Can you not see it move?
I can't. Can Randy, can you see it?
Darn. Can you see it, Randy?
No.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay, so let me talk from it then. There's a tree way in the foreground.
Can everybody see my mouse?
No.
Okay, well then
there's mine.
Nah, it's all right. Just talk.
The tree right closest in the foreground on the right hand side,
right.
And go down to the next one, and as you follow that down, just about 10 feet to the right of that is the edge of the house.
Oh wow.
And where you see that red part, that is a cut that goes down about 9 feet right now, and then that's where the main living area of the house is. So the living room actually looks at the beach and the mountain.
Yeah.
And then as you come to your left, you can see that it kind of cuts out, and what it really is that flat section comes around some more. And that's where the garage is going to come up from there, but the house actually runs off down the hill as well. So it's going to be sitting.
It's going to be sitting on the lot at a diagonal, basically.
Well, yes and no. To the water, yes.
Okay.
So to the property line where you see my neighbor's house on the far right of the picture, you can see his carport.
Yep.
It actually is perpendicular or parallel with his property line, and fairly parallel to the street. Or actually in that case, perpendicular to the street where it intersects right there. And of course, you may not know it from looking at, well, you won't know it from looking at this picture, but I don't know how much you know about the size of this lot, but it's 2 acres. It runs around the corner 500 feet all the way to my neighbor's house.
2 acres. So it goes up all the way in the cove, back around to the 3-story neighbor house, right?
Yeah. If you're familiar with this edge of the lake from the point, all the way to the gut, where my neighbor's dock is, that is 500 feet of water frontage and 500 feet of road frontage.
Well, I think I speak for Rick, myself, and 152 other property owners on Lake DeSoto when we thank you for improving the property values in our area.
You're quite welcome.
Would that be well put, Rick?
Quite welcome.
That is, and it's just amazing that Gary had the foresight to take a look at it and not be scared away by how steep the property is. Because I mean, before he cleared it, it just looks steeper before it gets cut into. And so now that it's cleared and cut into, and particularly from the water side, you look at it and just say, man, what a golden opportunity that was. And a lot of people missed out on that one.
Yeah,
Well,
we say the same thing as well. And everybody said, man, I don't know about that. You're going to have a super steep driveway, and they've already built it up a lot. And it's not near as steep as anybody thought it was. But now people come and they say, oh, wow, well, that's not as near as bad as I thought it was.
Well, if I can, you have a secret weapon up your sleeve, and that is Gerald Ellison. He's done this for 30 years. He's one of the best there is. I was telling before we hit the roll button, his brother Dave came over and said, "Are you home?" This is Saturday. He said, "Are you home?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I kind of in and out." He said, "I've got some more vegetables for you." He said, "I've got rid of that squash. I need some more okra, and you need some more peppers." And I'm like, okay, sure. Yeah. So anyway, and for what it's worth, and I don't know if you know this, Gary, but the Ellisons, as soon as you come in the village and turn the very second road where you go Balearic and come up over the top, they owned all of that land over on the north side. And there were 10 brothers and sisters. And anyway, just a great traditional with that family. They're wonderful people. Can't say enough great things about them. Yeah. Rick, tell us what's happening with real estate here on the lake. What's going on?
Well, it's going crazy. I mean, the market already is hot with a shortage of inventory. Everybody knows that, but there's only so much waterfront. I mean, so you squeeze down the inventory that much further, and the demand, I mean, we've been having, of course, multiple offers, a very high percentage of cash buyers. So you don't have to worry about properties not appraising because folks are paying cash for it. A lot of out-of-state buyers. We're still getting folks from, I've just had one from Iowa. We get them from Texas, of course, and Illinois. But yeah, I mean, it's just extremely popular. But the opportunity is so rare and unique that I don't know that you could get a much better seller's market than it is right now.
Well, it's funny you should say, because last night Diane and I were looking at one of our properties over on Lake Balboa. And she said, "We still have that lot listed?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "You think we should come down off that any?" I'm like, "They're not making any more lake lots on Balboa. We're done. We're done." And she said, "Well, you're right. We probably ought to stick with this number, you know." And lo and behold, Rick, if Sarah did not call today and say, "Here, they'll offer that number." And I'm like, as soon as they went, and Diane was like, "Oh, great, we're going to sell it." I'm like, hang on. I'm not sure that I'm happy right now. That's a good thing, but I don't know. You know, if they back out, okay. Well, Rick, also, I want to come back with you just for 1 second, Rick. It says on your business card, it says RSP. Is that because I'm supposed to tell you if I'm coming to the party or not, or what does that mean?
Oh, no. It's RSPS. That's a resort and second home property specialist. It's just an accreditation from the National Association of Realtors, some additional education and experience having to do with folks that are investing or buying a second home. There are different issues, tax related, 1031 exchanges and different issues that folks have to be aware of. And not a lot of agents have that experience of working with those types of buyers. And I've just made it to kind of broadened, with folks in this area, we do get a lot of investors. And so it's just an opportunity to be able to provide a little bit of extra service.
Yeah. Well, Gary, give me an idea. How many bedrooms are we talking? How big, roughly square feet? Just ballpark. I don't want to know specifics.
Yeah, about 4,200 total. Mm-hmm. We went into this saying that we were going to stay at 3,000 and we kind of did, but we wanted, we know we're, every day we're older, right? We're going into this at 65. And so it's an age-in-place home. So all the doors are extra wide. We're making provisions for an elevator. There's a shaft, but no actual elevator today. And so we're 3 bedrooms upstairs and 2.5 baths upstairs. Yeah. And then downstairs, we said, wow, this is a lot of potential for what we felt was not a lot of expense to go ahead and instead of making it all crawl space, make it a finished floor. In most of it, we did leave a piece of it as crawl space because I just got to the point where that's enough. And so downstairs, we're going to have a large workshop for me, about 700 square feet, and a large storage area down there, and then a gym, or not a gym, a little exercise room, a game room, and a planting room for my wife, because she plants a lot, and a place to winter stuff, things that can't stay out for the winter, place just to kind of hold stuff. So that's, it's about 1,100 feet downstairs and 3,200 upstairs.
You sound like the old, what was his name? Sinbad, the old Sinbad commercial. He said, "Mom's going to punish you and make you go to your room."
Yeah.
It sounds like the basement is the doghouse. Please send me to the doghouse.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll be back in a couple of days, honey. Right.
Yeah, I want to make sure when I get sent down there, I'm comfortable.
I want to come back and touch on something real quick that not everybody brings up in the village. The village is rocky terrain, to say the least, right? It's a great thing that it's beautiful and it makes for great lakes, because I got news for you, it don't grow that much, not natively. And what happens is that, especially around the lake, every lake lot does this. They're steep. So when you dig them out to make their footing, and then you build on top of that, well, you say, well, I want to build up a little so we'll have a view. Yeah. Well, then you've got a basement that's nearly the same size as the top floor. So this home plan creep is not new to anybody. Would that be fair, Rick?
Yeah, the walkout lower level is pretty common in this area.
Yeah, kind of a beautiful area that way too. Randy, have I covered everything that I might got for you?
Gary, have you ever lived on a lake before?
No, not previous to having this townhouse.
Well, I mean, Southern Louisiana, I get the proximity to the water, so I'm not going to ask, but I mean, you're going to have a place to launch the Piro or something, So.
Yes, yeah, and that was a real culture shock for me. I mean, I always lived within a half a mile of the water, and when we moved to Kansas, that was definitely not the case. But this gives us a lot, right? I mean, the only thing that we don't have here is salt water, and I'll be retired. And when we feel like we need to dip our feet in that, we will go south for a few days.
Well, and if I can also make note, when you walk into this water, you can go in 5 feet and it comes up 3 feet. In South Louisiana, you can go out 200 feet and you're up to your knees, right?
Yes. Yeah. That's absolutely right. That's absolutely correct. And I don't know if you're aware of this, not Dennis, but in this picture, about halfway to the dam it's about 100 feet deep.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, out in the middle of the gully, if you'll make note, back up on Valina this way, and I'm pointing and we're on a podcast. So, yeah. But up on Valina, it gets to around 1,400 feet. So I'm at 875 right now, which is where they're going to be very close to that height. But I've been told, and I've told this to Randy before, there's a little bit guy with an older party barge with a little tin roof, and he puts his dog on the back deck, and he hangs out deep sea tackle. And I'm not exaggerating. He does not have line. Yeah, he does not have line. He has wire. Right. And he will troll. He has caught, the biggest I've ever seen him catch was a 93-pound catfish.
Oh my goodness.
And it was over 125 feet in the middle. But this makes a gully right down in the middle. And so, when we drain it down, you think, okay, well, it goes out a little and it goes down some. Out in the middle, it does this. I mean, it just falls off like a cliff where the ancient creek bed has run for 1,000 years. And that's what he'll always troll back through there. Last time he had a 65-pounder. I think I saw him on the wall at the DeSoto Marina before they renovated it with a 93-pounder. But that's a big, small kid, if you know what I mean. Right.
Yeah.
Rick, what advice do you have for us? I've got a burning desire to live on the lake. What would you say for us?
Well, I think you have to weigh the few opportunities to build, like Gary is doing. I mean, there's literally, I think there are about 6 different lakes here in the village right now that have one waterfront lot available. They're challenging lots. It's very difficult to build on. I'm just real partial to finding something that has the floor plan that you want, because you can't really change that, but you can really do a complete remodel and get all of the granite countertops and the new cabinetry. And I mean, you're going to put some money into it, because these homes were built in the 70s and 80s, but what you have when you're finished is really impressive. I mean, I certainly, can appreciate what Gary's doing. I mean, that's a really unique situation. But for folks that can't find, a bargain, an amazing opportunity on a lot like that, I think just a remodel that's probably the best way to get on the lot. And that way you have more pick over where you are. Not all waterfront is created equal.
Oh.
So you're on a cove or you're on a point. You're on the main body of the lake. Do you want high bank or low bank? Not all folks are going to be able to handle the high bank, walking wise. So low bank waterfront is even harder to find. So all of those things help determine value as well.
I can't think of any two lake lots that are even remotely identical. I mean, not in the village, because I mean, just a few dozen feet away, they're different.
Right.
They're completely different. Just down the way here on the cove, closer, not far, Gary, from where you're looking at the beach. And by the way, in that picture, I wanted to tell people we're looking at the dam. The DeSoto beach is just to the right of that. They put a little boat dock there, which is kind of nice now. I didn't know they were doing that. Back behind that is the hill that Alicante runs over the top of. And that view from the top of that mountain is over both of the lakes. So it's a really beautiful combination. I want to tell you something that Larry, a guy that lived down this side by the beach, said one time. He said, you can bulldoze the house, you can change this, you can change that, you can make the closet size different, whatever, but you can never change the water. And I was like, and that's why, Gary, that's why when I saw your property and wanted you to be on the show, that's magnificent water. I've looked at it from my boat and driven by and thought, wow, this is really gorgeous. And then driven down Toledo and looked at that side too. It's going to be a magnificent home. And once again, we do appreciate you looking in there. But wait, there's more. There was one other detail we meant to mention. Rick, just a minute ago, you said there were like 6 vacant lots on all these lots, several of the lakes combined.
Right. There are probably 6 lakes that have one lot on them. I think Lake Coronado right now has 4, right, but most of the little lakes each have 1 on them right now. So
there's just one. When people call and say, hey, I want a lakefront lot, and it doesn't matter what the price is. Number one, they haven't researched what the price is. But number 2, everybody has a dream of a lakefront lot, and we'll build our perfect dream mansion there, which, as we said just a moment ago, sometimes it's better to remodel what you have. But as we talk, and Gary, I don't know if you know this or not, right where your lot is and your 5-acre lot goes around to the neighbors that are from the UK, the 3-acre, they're right here, literally back behind her, the 3-story home. As it goes right up to the dam, Rick and I were looking Friday, and I said, oh, look, Cooper Communities has a piece of property right on the very edge of the dam. What, Rick, maybe 20 feet of lakefront? Maybe
I don't
15?
even know if it's that, and it's a real odd access even at that.
Basically, Randy, if you thought that you were going to make a road that came down on top of the dam from Toledo where you are, Gary, you would go right across this piece of land. And Cooper just sold that one for what, $41,000?
$41,000.
It has the tiniest sliver you could say that you could put a boat dock on, and you would literally probably be standing on the dam when you did that. But that's the kind of.
You're not just talking about a challenge in steep. You're also talking about a challenge. There's a creek that comes right down almost through the middle of that property. That's going to be a real challenge to build on. I mean, they bought it on the cheap, but it's definitely going to be a creative one to build on for sure.
And when people say repeatedly, oh, that's an unbuildable lot because it'll be low and there'll be water that comes through there. I'll tell you right now, Gerald Ellison's built on every one of those. I've never seen one yet he hadn't been able to build on. He is a fantastic builder, but it's going to take more building, more design, more infrastructure to shred that water away. But you can buy a lot, or you could buy a lot for $41,000 on Lake DeSoto. But that was just a piece of information.
I've got a question, and Rick, so in Gary's lot, a couple of acres. I mean, how unprecedented is that?
It's pretty amazing. I mean, at 110,000, you would comp out a steeper lot, and that's a rarity to get one for that. And so to make it 2 acres with the prime view, looking across not at other homes, but of the dam and the beach and the spillway. I mean, that's just such a unique property. I wouldn't want to be the appraiser that had to take a shot at what something like that is worth.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, just a curious question. Did Gerald help you position where he thought the home should be there and what it should look at? Do you have that already lined out?
Actually, we had, because we've had the property for 8 or 9 years, we were pretty much there. The only what ended up coming is we had positioned it somewhat closer to, because my wife was all along. We got 500 feet of water. We're right next to our neighbor. I want to be right in the middle of the property.
Yeah.
Well, what we found out early on was this was originally 2 lots in the very early plat of the village. Where we are standing looking, that was lot 2. Lot 1 was at our far neighbor. They did deem that lot unbuildable and combine them as one. So our property is now lot 1. But yet we ended up having to move even closer to the neighbor because of the new FEMA regulations.
Oh.
So when and no one's built on this lot since Katrina, on this lake since Katrina. And what you run into at any lake lot you're going to build on in anywhere in the country is if your property touches water, you're in a flood zone. And the onus is on the property owner to prove that it's not. And so we had to go and do all of that upfront work, get with FEMA, get a surveyor, figure out where that was. And because this lot is not like square with the water, there's ins and outs. And they had to come lay out where that flood line was. And we actually had to move the house another 10 feet to the right. But we were pretty, we'd looked at it for a long time. And originally I tried to have it square with the lake, but that looked only at the dam because like we talked about earlier. And one of the things Gerald taught me was the Ouachita's are the only mountains in the country that actually run east and west. All mountain ranges run north and south, with the exception of Ouachita, and it runs east and west. So we're in a huge, this was a valley, right? So we're in a valley, and the way you make a lake in a valley is you put a dam up, and that's what we were looking at. And it was difficult to get the shape of the house, and we just finally gave up on that. One day we were sitting there looking out, and I'm like, well, there's mountains over there, and still no body. So. And I'm a very square person, right? And I was trying to get it squared up with as many things as I could, and nothing on the property is square except the one property line. So we ended up square with that, and that was done by the time Gerald got involved.
Wow.
What's your ETA? And I realize that that's a moving target these days.
It is a moving target. We right now, I would say by early May is. Wow. Really? Yeah, we're. With Gerald, you're 8 to 9 months. It becomes real difficult to get it done any quicker than that. And a lot of it has to do with the quality of home he builds, right? He's not slamming stuff together. The framing phase of this is a 2-month operation.
Well, and I got to say,
probably still a month from that.
The properties that I've seen from Gerald literally are flawless. They are without peer. I mean, and Rick, I know you do this too. We walk in and go, okay, how's the trim? How's the flawless? Yeah. They say contractor grade. There's contractor grade, and then there's Gerald grade, and it's really beautiful stuff. I wanted to come back, Rick. He touched on something that I wanted to mention. Some of the townhouses down on this side, and actually some right across from me, we had looked at some of those properties, Randy, and I thought, well, we're 6-8 feet off the water, no big problem, whatever. Yeah, you're nodding, aren't you, Rick? Yeah. Yep. Some of these townhouses on this side, Randy, they were saying, well, Dennis, unless you want to pay cash, it's going to be another $140 to $180 a month for flood insurance. And I'm like, flood insurance?
Yep.
For this dam? You'd have to have 10 feet of water going over the end of this dam for this street. So it didn't seem like a realistic number to me. Rick, tell us more about that.
Well, government and logic, those two things don't necessarily go together. But by the time some of these flooded, you'd have a 8-foot tsunami going over the spillway. So I'm not sure exactly how you could consider that a flood zone. But if they get classified, it's a lot more work to try to work through those things, and can be quite expensive.
Yeah, and we were looking at a townhouse kind of up in the cove, maybe 2 down from you. And Tom Hasselblum, whatever, had it. Yeah, Hasselstrom had it for sale, and he was talking about that. He was like, well, this one that's way up in the cove is the only one that doesn't have to have flood insurance. And I'm like, but these houses are connected. Yeah, but they have to have flood insurance because they're further out on the point and whatever. And so, Gary, you're telling me you were able to avoid that, right?
I was just by moving, because as you look to the left, you can see the property. I mean, you can't, what you're looking at here, that's a little orange in color, is all flat. That's completely flat. And then it looks like it goes from flat to that silt fence. Well, that silt fence is about 60 feet away. So it falls off pretty hard there. And we didn't, moving 10 feet got us up about 6. So and of course, Gerald was quick to point out that that's a lot less block we got to lay. So, he was happy, and he would have liked us to move it even further. I'm like, I'm only 27 feet from my neighbor now. I'm as close as I want to be.
Yeah, I would think so.
We'll live with where it is.
Randy, any other questions?
I don't. I'm green with envy, even though I've got a blue shirt on.
We'll have you over when we get it done.
Yeah. I will be there.
We will come by.
Crawfish boil or something.
Oh, yeah, we do need a crawfish bowl, don't we?
Yeah, we do.
Well, I'll tell you what, for Rick Marshall, for Gary Mouton, for Dennis Simpson, for what's his name? Randy Cantrell. Thanks again for joining us for an episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out. You can find us at hsvinsideout.com. And we have, over 1,100? We're right at 1,100 followers.
We're pushing it.
Yeah, we're
pushing it really hard.
And over 100 likes on or follows, subscribers on YouTube. Thank y'all so much. Randy, are we at 100 days yet?
We as we hit record, I think we were on day 103 or something like that. So yeah, we're just pups. Pups with fantastic growth, and it's all due to our watchers and listeners. Thank you so much. For Randy Cantrell and myself, come back and see us again at hsv.com, hsv.com. Why do I do that, Randy? I don't know.
hsvinsideout.com, and see us on the web. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Hot Springs Village Inside Out, a podcast where Hot Springs Village, Arkansas is the star. Please subscribe to the podcast. You can do that by visiting our website, hsvinsideout.com, and tell a friend.